First of all, what is podcast SEO? Just a definition, a working definition for us today. It's the process of optimizing your podcast metadata and content so that it ranks higher in search results on directories like Apple and Spotify, and also on traditional engines like Google. I'm going to pause here for a second just in case anybody wants to take a screenshot of this or just take it in. But then I have a slight caveat. The caveat is that podcast SEO and SEO in general are not the same thing exactly, but there are many overlapping principles and tactics. So a lot of what we're going to learn today is applicable between the two, but there are some differences, and I will do my best to point those out as much as possible. Please feel free to jump in with any questions that you have or things that you've heard, myths that you want busted that I can help with. So currently, how do listeners and viewers discover you? There are a bunch of different ways. The one that we're going to talk about today, the main one, is in-app search and a little bit of web search. But there's also answer engines, which is a new thing, AEO, answer engine optimization. So we're not necessarily going into the whole AI of it all for a few reasons. One, it is not my area of expertise. Two, it is still forming, and there are companies popping up all over the place to help you with your answer engine optimization. At this point, they are expensive because there's so few of them and not everybody has the expertise on them. But also, the algorithms are changing all the time. The best practices are changing all the time. So I did not feel comfortable writing or teaching a whole workshop on this. But there are some things that will apply to answer engines and a few things that I can talk about. Word of mouth is a huge way that people find your podcast. And I often think to myself that once you get your show word of mouthable, word of mouth recommendable, you've made it. Like if your show is, whether it's in your niche or in a broad scenario, if people are talking about your show, recommending it to a friend, telling colleagues, this is the show that you need to listen to, you've made it. But until then, we need to try all of these other things so that we can one day become word of mouth recommendable. Newsletters are huge. I fight the good fight for them because I have a podcast recommendation newsletter. So I've had a lot of insights over the years. I've been writing it for 9.5 years. So I've heard a lot of interesting stories from people about how they find podcasts. And a lot of it is from newsletters, but a lot of it is newsletters reinforced by a lot of these other things. Often your presence in a newsletter is just one touch point that gets somebody interested, and then they see it elsewhere, and then they see it elsewhere, and that's what eventually causes them to take action, subscribe, and decide if they then like it from there. You can also get your show discovered by IRL, in real life activations. Maybe you have a QR code at a napkin at a coffee shop near you. Maybe you have a partnership with a coffee shop. Maybe you've just printed out a bunch of QR codes or logos of your show with a clear call to action, and you've put those stickers up around town. Maybe you are actually tabling at a farmer's market talking about your podcast. I would love to know in the chat what is an interesting or off the beaten path way that you have attempted to get your show in front of listeners, or I'm saying viewers here. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I'd love to know if you have tried something out that you'd like to share. What have you tried, and where have you seen success when it comes to people discovering your show? While people are typing, viewers, why do I say viewers? Because obviously nowadays people are active on social media, active on video platforms like YouTube, but now Apple Podcasts allows you to upload video as well. Spotify has had that for a while. There are a number of ways to incorporate video. We've done some workshops on that in the past, whether it's going full on video studio, or it's just incorporating some visual elements, or it's just having a static image and making it available on Spotify. A lot of people don't know that you can be on Spotify just with your RSS feed and have it be a podcast player on Spotify. So that's worth knowing as well. If you have zero Spotify presence right now, you can without having to do any video at all. I can share a link to that later. So I want to share a few of the responses that we got here. Dan says that an interesting thing that you did to attract listeners was hosting a trivia night. That's awesome. That's a dream of mine. I would love to attend one of those. Mark says you hosted a giveaway using King Sumo. What is King Sumo? Please feel free to tell us in the chat. And Caroline says, I visit bookstores, pop culture creator shops, and I talk about my show to the owner, manager, employees. That's awesome. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a big part of it is being in the niche that you want to be, IRL, and letting people know that this thing exists. You're creating those moments where people can discover you. Anybody else who is joining us live, feel free to let us know what's a way that you've found that people discover your show, especially if you've heard from people. A big thing that I started to do, and you'll notice whenever you sign up for an event that I put on, is how did you discover this? Because if you can figure out how people discovered your show or your event or this or that, you can assume that there's more audience where that came from in that vicinity. King Sumo is an online software that lets you create and manage giveaways. That's really interesting. So, a tactic that certain shows might be able to use in order to grow their show. Probably not right for every single show, but Mark, you have a podcast about podcasting, the Podcasting Morning Show. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So how are listeners and viewers finding your show?